Welcome to the Next Generation Dog Podcast, hosted by Lynda Benbow of Urban Uplander Pet Care and Bethany Carter of Sanguine Moon Kennels. Join Melinda and Bethany as they discuss dog breeds, sports, training, health, and much more with special guests. Tune in weekly for all things dedicated to dogs.
Awesome. I love it. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Next Generation Dog Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Lynda Benbow, and I'm accompanied with my best friend and co-host, Miss Bethany Carter. How are you?
Hello, I am just getting off of work from a long shift, but I am so excited to be here with all my dog people. We're here today to learn about my bestie's breed, English Setters. So this is a breed that I definitely could learn a lot about. I trial with them, I see them in shows, and man, is there a difference between these breeds. So I am so excited to introduce Miss Lynda Chase, who's going to give us a deep dive on the breed.
I'm Lynda Chase, and we started out in Michigan in the breed, and we live in South Carolina now for the last 4 years. But my husband and I got my son and I got our first field English setter in the mid-90s. We had a Springer, and she was getting older, and I knew that I really didn't want another Springer, but Andrew did his research. He wanted a good upland bird dog, and he fell in love with English Setter. And we got our first one, and from a field setter breeder. And he actually Andrew did all his research because our Springer bitch was very domineering, and he got to pick the puppy, and he researched how to do it. And I kept on going, of course, for the more domineering one because I that's what I like. And he said, "No, Mom, we're going to pick out this one." And he picked out the perfect dog for us. And he lived till he was 16 years old. And but before he passed, we ended up getting my first show English setter. And actually, Rosemary Wheatley was very key in directing me to, because I really didn't know anybody that was a breeder of show English setters. And that's how I got my start with Sadie. And it took me a while to finish her, but I did finish her. And then we got two other dogs, bitches from great breeders too, Susan Lee and Doug Rivet from Canada. And Doug's bitch ended up to be our foundation bitch. So that very first litter that we had 9 puppies, and 5 of them finished their championship. And 1 was field pointed, and the 2 we kept and several others got, their hunting titles. And so that was the beginning for us. And we have never looked back. We love the breed. We got hooked immediately, and most of our very dear friends are English setter people, and we've enjoyed it very, very much, and we've had great success, not only breeding dogs that are beautiful and have achieved their grand championships, but also know how to hunt. That's my point, is if they're going to just, oh geez, we had
you got a dog list. I love that. Classic English setters.
She's heading for the cat food. That's her goal in life. So sorry about
that. You're anyway, okay. That's how my setters are.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we have, that's our story. We've got 4 that we have right now, and they're all champions. They all have hunting title. One's halfway to her junior hunt title, and that's our story about English setters.
No, I think that's awesome. I feel like so many show setter people that I've met have started with that with that hunting dog and just have grown to love it and continue to want to experience the rest of our breed because we do have such a big show field split in our breed, and everything and in between are just, they're amazing dogs. But it sounds like this first dog captivated you. You got going, you started breeding, and you're now involved with the English Setter Association, right? I believe you're a breed mentor for us.
Exactly. I actually joined right away. I joined our regional club in Michigan, Michigami, which is a great club that has people that are in confirmation, but they're field English setters in it too. And we have we've got a couple dual champions in that club, which is really
Yeah.
cool. And I am now a member of the Central Carolina English Setter Club too. And I have always been in the ESSA, the English Setter Association of America. And I've been on the board for many years, and I've been the treasurer for the past 5. And it's just, it is great that people, I think, are getting more and more and more, not just into showing, but doing field work too with their dogs. Because to me, our dogs have never gotten bred if they didn't have hunt in them. I mean, that's what the breed's all about. I mean, they're great family dogs. They're wonderful with children. They are friendly. When they're outside and there's birds around, that's what they're focused on. But they're great.
Absolutely.
They're great dogs to have in the house. They're great house dogs too, and they love
Yeah,
cat
and
food
you all,
too.
they love cat food. I'm telling you, my cat tree's right here, and that is our biggest thing with Shug is she's always trying to climb it to get to the cat food. But
Yes,
you heard it
exactly.
here, folks. So there's so many, I think, because I've definitely got my start in the hunting side of English setters, and there's a lot of folks on this side that believe, there's a lot of show people not breeding for a hunt, and I love that you said it, and these people can hear it here that yes, hunt is still being prioritized even in these show lines. So that's amazing to hear. Let's dive into just a little further, just a quick breed history. We obviously know they're bird dogs, but can you explain a little more about what a setter is and what they were originally kind of bred to do?
Well, they were originally bred to hunt birds, and this meaning setter is that they would go on point on a bird, and they would actually crouch down to the ground. And the reason being is originally when they hunted and they would set on the bird and they'd be crouched down. And what the hunter would do, they didn't just shoot the bird, they threw a net over the birds. And that's how they got the birds. And so, hence, if they had a tail that was like this, it wouldn't work in the net, right? So
Yeah.
that's why for us in confirmation, we like to see a tail that goes straight off the back. And that's that's going back in history, the reason why.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and they're wonderful upland bird dogs. They are enthusiastic. Some cover more ground than others, and but they're very reliable.
Yeah,
When they're on point, they found a bird. It's
absolutely.
it's really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I remember being at a hunt test, and it was a hot day, and those birds burrow down deep on
Oh
hot
yeah.
days, and my Ryman type, who has more of that show tail kind of straight out, unlike my field dog with a very high tail. She stopped, and the judge said, because I couldn't find the bird, and she said, well, let's move on. I said, if my dog's on point, there's a bird there. I'm gonna find this bird. And I had my GoPro on. You could hear me huffing and puffing, digging in the ground looking. But sure enough, there was a bird there. So you're right. When they're on point, you trust them. And that is probably one of the biggest differences we see in the breed split is a lot of people, once guns came around and we didn't need to net our birds so much. A lot of breeders started highlighting on more of those pointing features and selectively breeding that, and which is definitely what got our breed split to keep splitting and splitting and splitting. But no matter what kind of setter, English setter you get, there's amazing hunters. Since we've talked a little bit about their roles, we definitely mentioned hunting a lot. I guess that means in the show world, we would consider these sporting group, right?
Absolutely. They're in the sporting group. And they're one of the first breeds that, in AKC. And well, I'm really proud to say that in the last 2 years at Westminster, an English setter has won the sporting group. And even
Yes.
prouder to say they were bitches. So, because it's always hard in the show world when you're competing against these males, that there's just more substance to them and everything, and more, a lot of times more coat, not so much anymore, but it's really it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Fantastic for our
And I
breed.
think, what was it, 2 years ago? It was a owner handler too. So it's nice seeing that owner handlers are, getting stuff done, and it gives people like me hope for the future, because I know there's so many amazing professional handlers out there, but there's so many of us that want to start handling our own dogs. So it was neat to see that as a win as well. Absolutely. Again, it gives little ladies like me hope for the future. Now, we obviously we're talking about the origin, and we're going to move into the more of the standard. And what we'll do is we'll give you a full breakdown of the standard, and then you can grab one of your dogs and give us a beautiful, a visual sight of what this looks like. Are there any other interesting facts or anything else you want to share about the breed development before we move forward?
An important thing, I guess we could cover it later, but they are active dogs and they do need exercise. And it's really important that anybody that gets one understands that. These are not dogs that are content to sit on the couch 24/7. It's not going to happen. But anyways, as far as the development, I think that it just continues to get better and better and better.
Absolutely.
And people are way more cognizant about health testing than they were maybe even 20 years ago. So, do you want me to talk? Is this a good time to talk about the?
Yeah, I think it is. Let's talk about, you mentioned the health testing. I think let's dive into what the parent club recommends as health testing for these dogs.
So the first thing that you do when they're puppies and they haven't, left the nest yet is bear testing hearing. And that's done by a neurologist, and you bring them to, whoever does that in your area. And that's the most important thing. And that's when you figure out if they, can hear in both ears or one, or if they're deaf, God forbid. I am happy to say we only had one a uni, which could hear in one ear, but not the other. And he's doing well. He's 7 years old. But that's the first thing. And then the next set of testing that you do when they're thyroid testing after they're 6 months old, or that might be a year. Thyroid.
The standard thyroid is usually about 1 to 2 years old, and then you should test it annually, because usually they start to show signs of the autoimmune disease around 3 to 4 years old is when it's exposed.
Yeah, thanks, Bethany, for
no problem.
clarifying that. But anyway, and then it's hips and elbows at 2. And historically, the biggest issue I would say in English setters right now is thyroid. And so that's just like Bethany just stated. And I'm really proud to say that ESSA, our parent club, every year at our national, we pay for a large portion of the testing. So it's very affordable to people to get their thyroid tested on their dogs right at the show. And that's when I do mine every year. I do my dogs at the national. And it's so affordable compared to if you went to a vet clinic and had to have the whole panel done. So anyway, hearing, hips and elbows, thyroid. It's gotten to be a lot less of a problem with hips and elbows, being almost bigger than hips. And but that less and less of issues with those, and thyroid being the last, hill we need to conquer as far as, it can just pop up out of nowhere.
I love it. So it sounds like the main things we need to have done are the bear hearing, the elbow and hips, and then the thyroid. And those are the main things we need to have done for the English setter breed. And it sounds like thyroid is something we should try to do annually, because it does sound like over time these numbers can change and this disease can happen later in life rather than earlier. And you're right.
A lot of times it'll occur after if they've been spayed or neutered. So that can trigger it. So that's
okay.
So
pet parents are still going to want to do these things as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I really, I really try to make people aware of the ovary sparing spay and the neuter, where it's basically a vasectomy. I think that it used to be such a push to get a full spay and neuter when people were not as responsible. And people like the three of us and many people that are involved in the dog fancy are responsible. Their dogs don't run at large. It's more a different group of people that, that's probably the dogs that end up in shelters and stuff. So.
Yeah. I think that's a narrative that has been changed lately is, they used to say responsible pet owners spay and neuter, where it's really responsible pet owners know how to manage and mitigate and supervise and take care of their dogs and ensure these problems don't happen. So that's perfect. I love knowing that, and we'll keep going forward. We went ahead and did all these things with Shug too, even though we didn't move forward with breeding her. They're just great things for you to know about your dog. So I do recommend those to pet people. But let's talk a little bit about the show standard of the English setter. Can you explain a little bit about that to us?
I would love to. And actually, the easiest way to do that, you two, would be to actually get Ellie and go over her and show you blow by blow. So will that work for you?
Okay. All right. So Ellie is 2 years old. She is a grand champion and has been a champion since she was 10 months old, a grand champion by 14 months. So she has been a big deal to us.
Yeah, so I'd say so.
I'm going to start out with her head, okay? So on an English setter, you want you want equal distance from the nose to the top of their head. Okay? You want the flu to hang down, but you don't want it to droop down. This is how they scent for birds. Okay? So that's really important. And you want their ears to be set straight back from their eyes.
That makes sense. So set kind of means that like lower set, right? So they're not pricked towards the top of their head.
When they're alert, like see how she just put her ear up? Okay, so that's fine.
Gotcha.
But when they're relaxed, you want it to be basically right around here. Set. You want their nose to be pigmented. And the reason for that, you guys, is you don't want them getting sunburned. They're field dogs. So you don't want them to get sunburned. Okay. And so that's why pigment is so important.
And is that the same for around the eye too? The pigment around the eye?
Totally. You want the eye totally pigmented. you want the eyes tight. You don't want them loose. Stop. You don't want them loose. And the reason why you don't want them loose is because when they're out in the field, you don't want them picking up debris from the field.
Mm-hmm. That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
they're crashing through and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And you just don't want them. You want them to have a nice neck, okay? You don't want it short because it's going to affect their movement. And so you want a nice long neck, but you don't want it to be like a gazelle
Okay.
because they've got to be able to pick up a bird. You know, it's not always it might be a pheasant, which is a much bigger bird. So you want it to be long, but you don't want it to be like a gazelle, and you don't want it to be short because that really does affect their movement. You want from here, this point, the point of their shoulder, from here, nice smooth shoulders. You want it to go down, and then you want it to be equal distance to the top of their elbow.
Oh,
That
yep.
affects their movement and their length of stride.
Looks
And then
good.
you want to be, English setters aren't notoriously, don't have a huge, what we call brisket, but it should be
Okay.
moderate. Everything about this dog should be moderate. And
Okay.
so you want to be able to feel their breastbone. And then you want a nice top line. I just had my
That-
knee replaced, so I'm not kneeling down.
No, please don't hurt yourself for us.
So you can see she has a nice straight
I like that.
top line, and her tail comes straight off her back. You want their chest,
I love.
like
They're
any
so
sporting
beautiful.
breed, you want it to go to the top of their elbow, and that's for lung capacity. So that when they're out chasing, you know, out in the field, that they have enough room in their lungs to be able to
I love it. Well, I love how you explain that. The top line is beautiful, and you're right. It sounds like everything on the dog isn't just for physical appearance. It sounds like these all have important uses for the structure and movement of the dog.
Exactly. Okay, so then the last thing I want to point out well, for one thing, you don't want their loin to be any bigger than a hand, okay? So because you don't want them to be real long. And in this breed, there are no disqualifications. So that's why you
Okay.
really have to kind of like know your standard and what you're looking at. And you want the front and the back to match. So she has a nice bend of stifle, and you don't want long hocks because if the hocks are too long, they can't move efficiently.
What a beautiful dog.
Thank you.
And then, so while you have her out there, when it comes to color, we have about 3 main colors, right?
There are actually more than 3. She's a tri, and then there's a blue, and then there's an orange Belton, and then there's a lemon, which is a much paler orange. And you can actually have what's called an orange tri, which our Millie that we lost last summer, she was actually an orange tri.
Wow.
So she had the spots above her eyes that were just a little lighter than her rich. She had this rich orange.
Yeah.
Then have I covered everybody? There's the lemon, the blue, the tri, and
The orange.
the orange.
Are there any disqualifying colors?
No disqualifying, but patching on the face is fine, okay? But you really hope that you don't have a patch on the body it's not disqualifying at all.
Just
And
undesirable.
dark roaning is not a disqualification either. But we like it when the base of the dog is white and then the color is flecking on them. But again, no disqualification for color. Absolutely none.
Okay.
Very good to know. And then, so just so people understand, blue in our breed is that black color, the dogs that
Yes,
are
black and
going to
white.
be. And Belton is what you call our ticking in our breed, whereas, in German short hairs, you would just say ticking. And Belton, I believe, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, Lynda, refers to the town in which a lot of these dogs originally came from.
Well, you are better at that. You said that better than me. My historian is on the camera. So
I've done a little bit of research on this breed. I enjoy them. Well, I love that you explained the standards so beautifully to us, and your dog is absolutely beautiful. Ellie is beautiful. Thank you so much for the breakdown of the breed standard. In the description of this podcast, I will have the English Setter Association listed. So if anyone does want to see the full description of the breed standard, great place to click and check that out. But let's move on to the temperament. I know when people ask me about my dog's temperament, the best thing I can say is merry and majestic. So can you dive in a little further on what to expect when it comes to the temperament of this breed?
They are, I will say as puppies, realistically, they are oral. They are very oral. They love to search and destroy. So you have to have a lot of toys. And Dave and I always say a well-behaved dog is a well-exercised dog. So we do a lot of that. They get to exercise as much as they want. I don't push it. When they start getting tired, that's when we stop. But they are friendly. They should always be friendly. You should never see snarkiness towards towards a human being at all. They are usually 95% of the time great with other dogs. But they should always get along with other dogs because they're hunting dogs. They work in a group. They're with other dogs. And I would not call them watchdogs. Sorry to say, they're not. They might bark, but they're usually so happy to see any visitor that comes in the door. I think my family they think, are they ever going to stop being that way? And the answer is no. They really like you. So
they love people.
Yeah, they really, really love people.
Unless a bird is around, and then if you're not a bird and birds are present, they're a little aloof, but yes, they love people.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, they are wonderful. I love the temperament of the dog. And you're right, as puppies, they're a little wild, and physical exercise is very important. And this is a reminder to listeners that exercise also happens in a mental capacity as well. So don't forget to give your dog other outlets of exercise, like finding birds, things that are going to make them use their mind, use their nose, use other components of their physiologic makeup to tire themselves out. And it was crazy when Shug turned, I think, 2.5, who's my Ryman type setter. She just spontaneously matured out of nowhere and became this amazing adult dog. And, so anyone listening who has a puppy and maybe going through those terrible twos, they do mature. And when they mature, it's almost like a flip of the switch. But before we wrap everything up today, I do want to know some considerations for people that are looking into this breed. What are some things that people are going to want to make sure that they consider when having this breed? Who makes a good candidate as an owner? Maybe who doesn't make a good candidate?
I think if you're a person that is just sedentary and that you're not, somebody that likes to be outdoors, this is not a good breed for you. It's just not. It is a breed for people who love to be outdoors, that like to take their dog for a walk after work. Bethany, we know you're not up for that today after 13 hours, but
Hey,
And she probably still
you
will go to the
underestimate
bird dog
me.
field.
That's absolutely on the menu today.
So I just think that it's if you have children, they are wonderful children, dogs with children. I mean, when we moved down here from Michigan, we called them our Michigan grandkids. We had 4 kids that spent a lot of time at our house, and actually one of the families has 2 puppies from us. And I will never forget, I was at the Atlanta show, and we'd only lived here probably a year, not even a year. Maybe it was right before COVID. And this little girl came in with her mom, who happened to actually be a veterinarian. And Izza, our one girl, she thought it was our friend's daughter, Marley, that used to be at our house because she looked just like her. And she just got so excited. And I got the cutest pictures of them. And I go, every day when she'd walk into the show, I go, you've got to go say hi to Izza. She's so excited to see you. So that's the way they are. They love children.
Yeah.
So, and they
So
are
good family dog.
Yeah. And I will tell you, they love anybody that loves them. I mean, I'd like to say my dogs couldn't survive without me, but truly, they would just be fine as long as somebody loved them. So I just can't say enough about that. They're smart. They're very smart dogs. They love to do obedience. They love to do rally. They love to do agility. We see more and more of this breed in all those things. So, the sky's the limit as far as that goes.
They are a fun, versatile dog. So it sounds like if you want one of these dogs, and not just sounds like, I'm going to speak from personal experience real quick. If you want one of these dogs, be prepared to be on the go. We will hit the bird dog fields today. We'll probably hit other trails. They want to be out in nature. They are bred to do a particular job, which is find birds. So if you do not plan to give them some kind of facilitated outlet to do these things, they're going to engage in it one way or another. And not providing something for them to do is going to end up in those behaviors that we really don't want to see. But again, it's just these dogs doing what they're absolutely bred to do. So if this sounds like a breed that you are interested in, I highly recommend contacting Miss Lynda Chase. She is the mentor for our breed and obviously has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the English setter. Lynda, if people do want to get a hold of you, how can they find you?
They're welcome to email me at lrchase@Lynda, Lynda, chase.com. I'm on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, they are welcome to call me as well. And my phone number is 586-980-7522. And I'm always happy to talk dogs with people.
I love that. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for sitting down with us. Thank Dave for us for doing that camera work, and thank Miss Ellie for us. And to anyone who wants to find Bethany and I, you know how to do that. It'll show you and tell you at the closing credits. And ladies, thank you both so much for sitting down with me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Generation Dog Podcast. Weekly episodes are released on Fridays on Spotify and YouTube. Please follow the Next Gen Dog Pod on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and Facebook for even more content dedicated to all things dogs. Follow Urban Uplander Pet Care and Sanguine Moon Kennels on Instagram and Facebook.